So this week will probably be less of a specific teach and more of a thinking out loud for a few moments about what is probably the most intense and mysterious paradox of the Christian faith. And that is to try and understand simultaneously the goodness of God and the existence of evil. The Christian story tells us that God is all-loving, all-powerful and all good, but at the same time we have to reckon with the reality of this thing called evil that is pronounced throughout creation. Now, the existence of evil is, I think, by far the best argument against the Christian story that we have in the Bible, and therefore it is probably the most important argument that we have to figure out in order to properly articulate the Christian story that we have in the Bible. And I in no way intend to try and bring resolution or full clarity to this conversation. It's simply putting a few things on the table for us to consider. So first of all, let's consider briefly the nature of evil. What is it? Well, my conviction is, and this goes back right to the Church Fathers as well, who would also adhere to this perspective, is that evil within itself is not a thing. It has no ontological substance. It doesn't have a physical or even metaphysical existence in and of itself. If it did, it would therefore be a part of creation. And if it was a part of creation, then it necessarily would need to have been created. Now, the only one who can create is God. And God's creation is an extension and an expression of God's life. So to say that evil is created is to say that evil has existed eternally and infinitely within God and is simply an expression of something of the life of God within creation. That proposal is categorically false and incompatible with the Orthodox Christian faith and the revelation of God that we have in the Bible. Therefore, evil must be something else. If it doesn't have its own ontological existence, if it has not been created, then what is it? Well, we don't know. It's a mystery, but I think the best illustration and analogy is darkness. If you think about darkness, we know that darkness is real and we know what it is, but it's not a thing. You can't create darkness. You can't make a machine that makes a dark room darker, right? Darkness, by definition, is quite simply the absence of light. So in order for darkness to be, you just need the non-existence of light. Similarly, evil, I believe, is the absence of virtue, it's the absence of goodness, it's the absence of love. It's not necessarily its own thing, it is the absence of the good. Vileness is the negation of beauty. Impatience is the absence of patience. So evil does not so much have its own substantive existence, but rather it is the lack, it is an uncreation. Now that doesn't explain everything about what evil is and how it works and why it's so powerful. But I think it does give us a theological framework to try and understand what it is we're talking about here, is that it is the negation of, the absence of, the non-existence of God and God's life, God's virtue, His attributes and benevolence within creation. I think one of the best insights we get in this is at the end of Revelation, when we're told that everything that is against God and God's kingdom, Satan and death and evil, everything will be cast into the lake of fire and will be incinerated, it will be eradicated. And therefore all that negates creation, all that works against it, will be consumed in the lake of fire. Now, final thought would be, been reading a lot of George MacDonald recently, and in his imaginative theology he would be quick to say that the lake of fire is not a particularly hot lava-filled lake in a cosmic location. It's not some sort of terrifying heavenly furnace. The lake of fire is actually in itself the life of God. the holy love and power of God that will eradicate and consume all that is unlovely, all that works against the beauty of creation and the dignity of humanity, will be forever swallowed up and consumed and eradicated and vanquished within not a geographic place of furnace fire, but actually within the very life of God as it is symbolized for us by the lake of fire. And so God himself will take full responsibility for all that is evil and wicked within the cosmos and absorb it within to himself and eradicate it forever. Now we see the precursor for this and really the establishment of this on the cross when Jesus proclaims it is finished. So all that has been required within the cosmos to be victorious has been completed, and yet the full completion of that in Romans 8 we're told that we're not yet there yet. So we wait for that moment, we wait for that reckoning in the heavenlies when one day all of that will be taken into God and all that is left will be beautiful and will be light, and therefore there will be no darkness. But for now we seek to live by the Spirit in the life and the love and the virtue of God. Okay, I guess we'll consider a little bit more of this in the future, but until then, peace.